Hey guys, this is chapter 3 of The Science of Getting Rich. He uses a lot of outdated examples in this chapter. Kind of a fun look at the 1905-1910 in America time capsule. But of course you can draw parallels to today and everything going on today. So I will read the text and then be back with some commentary. Chapter 3. Is opportunity monopolized? No man is kept poor because opportunity has been taken away from him, because other people have monopolized the wealth and have put a fence around it. You may be shut off from engaging in business in certain lines, but there are other channels open to you. Probably it would be hard for you to get control of any of the great railroad systems. That field is pretty well monopolized. But the electric railway business is still in its infancy and offers plenty of scope for enterprise. And it will be but a very few years until traffic and transportation through the air will become a great industry, and in all its branches will give employment to hundreds of thousands and perhaps to millions of people. Why not turn your attention to the development of aerial transportation instead of competing with J.J. Hill and others for a chance in the steam railway world? It is quite true that if you are a workman in the employ of the Steel Trust, you have very little chance of becoming the owner of the plant in which you work. But it is also true that if you will commence to act in a certain way, you can soon leave the employ of the Steel Trust. You can buy a farm of from 10 to 40 acres and engage in business as a producer of foodstuffs. There is great opportunity at this time for men who will live upon small tracts of land and cultivate the same intensively. Such men will certainly get rich. You may say that it is impossible for you to get the land, but I am going to prove to you that it is not impossible, and that you can certainly get a farm if you will go to work in a certain way. At different periods, the tide of opportunity sets in different directions according to the needs of the whole and the particular stage of social evolution which has been reached. At present, in America, it is setting toward agriculture and the allied industries and professions. Today, opportunity is open before the farmer in his line more than before the factory worker in his line. It is open before the businessman who supplies the farmer more than before the one who supplies the factory worker, and before the professional man who waits upon the farmer more than before the one who serves the working class. There is abundance of opportunity for the man who will go with the tide instead of trying to swim against it. So the factory workers, either as individuals or as a class, are not deprived of opportunity. The workers are not being kept down by their masters. They are not being ground by the trusts and combinations of capital. As a class, they are where they are because they do not do things in a certain way. If the workers of America chose to do so, they could follow the example of their brothers in Belgium and other countries and establish great department stores and cooperative industries. They could elect men of their own class to office and pass laws favoring the development of such cooperative industries. And in a few years, they could take peaceable possession of the industrial field. The working class may become the master class whenever they will begin to do things in a certain way. The law of wealth is the same for them as it is for all others. This they must learn, and they will remain where they are as long as they continue to do as they do. The individual worker, however, is not held down by the ignorance or the mental slothfulness of his class. He can follow the tide of opportunity to riches, and this book will show him how. No one is kept in poverty by a shortness in the supply of riches. There is more than enough for all. A palace as large as the Capitol at Washington might be built for every family on earth from the building material in the United States alone, and under intensive cultivation, this country would produce wool, cotton, linen, and silk enough to clothe each person in the world finer than Solomon was arrayed in all his glory, together with food enough to feed them all luxuriously. The visible supply is practically inexhaustible, and the invisible supply really is inexhaustible. Everything you see on earth is made from one original substance, out of which all things proceed. New forms are constantly being made, and older ones are dissolving. But all are shapes assumed by one thing. There is no limit to the supply of formless stuff or original substance. The universe is made out of it. But it was not all used in making the universe. The spaces in, through, and between the forms of the visible universe are permeated and filled with the original substance, with the formless stuff, with the raw material of all things. 10,000 times as much as has been made might still be made. And even then, we should not have exhausted the supply of universal raw material. No man, therefore, is poor because nature is poor, or because there is not enough to go around. Nature is an inexhaustible storehouse of riches. The supply will never run short. Original substance is alive with creative energy and is constantly producing more forms. When the supply of building material is exhausted, more will be produced. When the soil is exhausted so that foodstuffs and material for clothing will no longer grow upon it, it will be renewed, or more soil will be made. When all the gold and silver has been dug from the earth, if man is still in such a stage of social development that he needs gold and silver, more will be produced from the formless. The formless substance responds to the needs of man. It will not let him be without any good thing. This is true of man collectively. The race as a whole is always abundantly rich, and if individuals are poor, it is because they do not follow the certain way of doing things which makes the individual man rich. The formless stuff is intelligent. It is stuff which thinks. It is alive and is always impelled toward more life. It is the natural and inherent impulse of life to seek to live more. It is the nature of intelligence to enlarge itself, and of consciousness to seek and extend its boundaries and find fuller expression. The universe of forms has been made by formless living substance, throwing itself into form in order to express itself more fully. The universe is a great living presence, always moving inherently toward more life and fuller functioning. Nature is formed for the advancement of life. Its impelling motive is the increase of life. For this cause, everything which can possibly minister to life is bountifully provided. There can be no lack unless God is to contradict himself and nullify his own works. You are not kept poor by lack in the supply of riches. It is a fact which I shall demonstrate a little farther on, that even the resources of the formless supply are at the command of the man or woman who will act and think in a certain way. Okay, so that's chapter 3, and obviously this one's a sign of the times. But it's really not, this is really sort of just the human condition, is viewing the world this way, because, he's talking about people feeling like there's no opportunity because the railroads have already been built. I mean, there are people today, and we're still essentially in the dawn of the internet age. There are people today who are like, there's no opportunity, everything's been taken. I've seen people say this in the last couple of years, which seems crazy to me. This is just a mindset. This is just, that's really all it is. It's just a belief. I don't have that mindset, and I'm so busy at this point. I see opportunities everywhere for money, for business opportunities and ways of making money that I simply don't currently have the interest or time to act on. They're everywhere. And when you're tuned the right way, which is the purpose of this book, is to shift the way you're viewing the world and the way you're being in the world, those things that are sitting all around that somebody like me, somebody like I can perceive, those become visible to you. That's part of how this works. And that being said, even if opportunity were monopolized, what this does, what this way of this orientation towards opportunity does for you is, even if there is a temporary shortage in some area that you're interested in, you will be the one that gets what's there, I guess, is a way to put it. I've talked on my YouTube channel about how in the midst of, at the height of the real estate market being just inflated beyond belief, although it hasn't crashed much at this point in June of 2023, when it first inflated, and there was so little supply compared to the demand. I knew people who had, were willing to bid 20% over asking price, and who were desperate to find a house, and who still didn't find one after a couple of years of trying to get one. Meanwhile, I didn't even try to look. I decided I wanted to move in December of 2021, and I didn't even, looking at the shortage that was out there, I just decided I don't like it all, thanks to this book and the mentality that I've adopted from this book specifically. I just don't like to participate in anything that has a feeling of competition where somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose. It's, to me, that energy is the antithesis of this, the formless substance, just having an abundance of anything you could want. And I didn't even look at houses. I just said, well, I'm not going to participate in this right now. This goes against my focus on creativity mentalities, abundance rather than scarcity. And what happened for me was I was in the right place at the right time to see a for sale sign going up in front of the house I eventually bought, or eventually the next day, the house I bought the next day. And it wasn't for an inflated price. It just so happened that the person selling it desperately needed the money to pay for their medical care, and they underpriced the house by a lot. It was more, the price was more in line with what pre-pandemic prices were, and because I was there at this opportune moment and had cash, I was the one who was able to purchase the house. It was just like it all came together perfectly. I never had to participate in anything competitive for 1 second. And these are the types of opportunities that I've experienced for 2 decades now, since just taking this whole book on faith. That's the kind of experience I've had in business and with buying my house and many, many other things. So even if opportunity is monopolized or appears to be monopolized, you will still skate right into these opportunities. And by the way, almost unexplainable assistance from what appear to be outer forces is often a part of these things. I was supposed to be out of town the day that I saw the sign for my house going up and was able to act on that. A windstorm came and prevented us from going on the expressway and delaying our trip by a day, and that was the day that I saw the sign going up, and basically everything happened over the next 24 hours for that. So, opportunity being monopolized is something that the idea plagues a lot of people, and this is one of the first things that you really need to understand. Does not play a role in anything that has to do with getting rich when doing things in a certain way, or just manifesting in general. Another thing he said in here that was, I think, of note is the section where he talks about factory workers not being kept down by their masters, not being grounded by the trust and so basically this is something to really think about if you're a member of a group who as a collective feels oppressed, or like opportunity has been taken from you. What he says here, as a class they are where they are because they do not do things in a certain way. That's not a knock, that's not, it's just an observation from this viewpoint. It's not to say that doing this is easy, especially not for a large class of people. But if you're in one of these groups, whether you're like in an age group that feels like there's no opportunity for you, or you're, a member of some other group that in general feels downtrodden, it's important not to identify yourself with that. It's very easy to be kept at a certain level of thought by, your peers, and the fact that you identify with being a part of a group with this, with this issue, I guess. It's really important to start to immediately think differently. Stop identifying with that. That's identity with scarcity. It's identifying with scarcity, which is the objective is to stop doing that. the objective is to start to open your eyes to the opportunities that are there all the time that you're just not seeing. So that, I think, is quite important. Another interesting, just a side note about that, Abraham Hicks, Esther Hicks, talks about how, groups of people that, somebody asked her a question about how does all this vibrational match stuff, which is really, when she talks about being a vibrational match for something, she's just talking about a feeling. She's just talking about the certain way that these are all essentially the same thing. And she always says that you're a vibrational match for everything that you get. And someone asked her a question about how, certain atrocities in history have happened. And she said, we don't want to tell you this. We don't want to, we know you don't want to hear this, but people are a vibrational match for what happens to them. And that can take on, that can be taken on by a whole group. There are people who weren't affected by those things. There are people who escaped from atrocities and that needs to be essentially you. That you need to, if you're in one of these groups or whatever, you need to break out of that mentality. By getting rich, by becoming the fullest expression of yourself that you can be, you can then inspire others to stop falling into that trap. You can then help to change things for large groups of people. Staying in the group, staying in the mentality, there can be an illusion that there's value there when there is not. And he says the visible supply is practically inexhaustible. The invisible supply really is inexhaustible. Again, this is just, this is shifting your focus onto abundance, not scarcity. That's the goal here. Again, turning focus to abundance. I've just got all these notes in the margins here. This whole chapter is about turning your mind to abundance. And even if I think rational, intelligent people tend to read this stuff and just say, okay, well, is it really inexhaustible? Is it really, will new soil really be made if we exhaust the soil we have? The point is not to pick apart every single statement for its particular merits. It's just to understand the whole concept here that, the supply is inexhaustible and what you want will be able to happen, and shift your focus off of that onto the abundance. That's really, this whole chapter is about that. And, is it true? Is it not? Will a big pile of gold just materialize in the middle of a field if we exhaust the supply for gold? And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if that particular, if the way he worded this is true. The underlying concept is true. And the philosophizing about, is there really enough for everybody? What happens if everybody takes on this mentality? Then, that is just not, it just doesn't, it's so far outside of the realm of what you need to do to develop yourself into the person that has so much that you can do for others. That's where you shouldn't get stuck on this. Just read it and feel it. Feel, as Esther and Abe Hicks say, get the vibration. The vibration is a feeling. Get the feeling of this. Get the feeling of enough for everybody. Get the feeling of there's an unlimited supply and nothing is out of reach for me. No opportunity that I really want is gone. That's the idea here, which of course, this all ties back to Neville, and feeling is the secret. And that is all I have to say about chapter 3. So I'll be back with chapter 4 soon.